Livia. He is a member of the Guild Wars community for quite some time. I've known him for a while, uh, and I will let him introduce himself. Livia, you there still?
Yes.
All
No,
right,
I didn't left. I
go.
was thinking about it, but
All right, go from the beginning, dude. Tell the people about yourself.
yeah, well, I guess I'm originally from Canada, French speaker, so from Quebec, and I've been playing Guild Wars for quite a while. Originally started when I was really young, like in 2010, but then played a bit of Minecraft and League of Legends. So still like toward of Andrew level 3. That's a pretty known fact about me. Toward of Andrew in 1v1. And then I restarted playing Guild Wars a bit more seriously, I guess, or I was a bit older, and then went quite a lot into the Speed Clear community. So that was like somewhere around like 2014, and yeah, since then I've played quite a bit of Guild Wars. Did a lot of programming, of reverse engineering on Guild Wars, pretty much a lot of investment in time in the game. So with that, I could like work on I work on tool like Guild Wars Toolbox, which is obviously a pretty popular third-party tool in Guild Wars, as well as did quite a bit of records, mostly in DOA though. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Guild Wars. That's and now I'm living actually in Germany, which is fairly convenient for playing Guild Wars because I guess like most of the player base is in Euro. As far as I know, I don't know how many people are left in the NA time zone, but as far as I know, it's a bit smaller. And yeah, and I'm a programmer in real life now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a lot in NA. We're struggling out here. I
yeah.
actually haven't played in a long time, but um, so when did you start playing Guild Wars?
So I think like I was in elementary school, right? So that's been a while ago, and there was a friend that was I don't know how you heard about it, but I had a couple of friends that was playing it, and I think they played probably like since Nightfall was out or so. But I started playing myself when Eyes of the North came out, so that must have been around like 2008, 2009. It was slightly after for sure because it was already out when I bought the game. But then I was pretty young, and as I said, I was French, and at this time I wasn't speaking a single word of English. So I was mostly playing with French people, right, from France, and that meant that there was a time zone difference of 6 hours. And if you think about it, during the week, it means that at around 9 p.m., which was when they were running, for me it was 3 in the afternoon, so 3 p.m., which meant that I was still at school in school. So it was a bit kind of complicated where I could only really play with people on the weekend. Uh, but yeah, it was around like 2008, 2009, around that.
Okay, you actually started a little bit earlier than me then. I think I started playing in like 2011, but like for the first year and a half, I only had prophecies. That was it. Even though like all these other
Right.
campaigns were out, and it's actually a funny story. I bought Eye of the North, and then someone I used to play the game with actually bought me the other two campaigns because I was just a broke
Oh,
kid in
really?
high school. Just
Okay.
yeah, I was a poor kid, you know.
Well,
So
y- yeah, I mean, that's a classic, I guess, high school thing. For me, it was somewhat funny where obviously I had like the person or the friend, my real life friend that was playing the game, kind of knew like the game fairly well at this point, and he told me like just buy faction first and start there, which is what I did, which is obviously like a much easier campaign to start with, right? It's very quick and so on.
right.
Um, but then I think, oh yeah, and I actually had like I bought it was a special edition. I forgot the name where it was prophecy and faction together, plus like the bonus mission pack. I think something like that. That was the deal. Um, but yeah, I was pretty young and pretty bad. But to me, like the biggest thing that made the difference is when I finished prophecy. I remember like I played for a while. I bought I think Nightfall, then Gwen as well, or Eyes of the North. Then I think when I finished Prophecy for the first time, I just went like TOA, Temple of Ages, right? And it was to look for people to do 600 HP Smith. in Foul or in Underworld, right, to farm ectos or shards. And there was this guys that was like organizing those pretty crazy Foul where like he was going with two other real person and a bunch of heroes, and we were literally cleaning the whole Foul, right? Like not every mobs, but like just going and doing all the quests in sort of mainly way. And it was taking, I don't know, like 1 hour and a half. But that was like sort of how I started, I guess, elite area, if we can call full Foul elite area.
Yeah, I think you'll make some scent players mad if you say that, so we'll consider
Mm,
it for now.
yeah. But it was pretty crazy. It was like Ursan plus a bunch of like, I don't know. Like it was obviously in the early days of Guild Wars, there was a lot of. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I don't know if you look back some of the older records, like even for the late day of Guild Wars, where obviously people knew how to play the game, but it's so far up, like not very well optimized compared to nowadays.
Yeah, I think whenever I first started doing even like casual DOAs, like getting a subcon casual was like unheard of at the time. Like you always I remember the record was like 44 minutes or something when I first started
Right.
playing DOA, and it was crazy.
It's actually not even that bad. Like when I started playing DOA, so it was sort of the early days of like the so-called Psychoe. So it was literally like even when I think about the build, it was so insanely crazy. So there was like obviously the two tanks. So there was like this usually the sliver tank, right, with who had this like elementalist skill that returned damage, right? But back then, this skill was returning damage to a single mob, so it wasn't spreading the damage around. So it was very efficient to kill enemies if you had a lot of range or casters attacking you. Then there was like I think the main tank was called who had stun flesh aura, I think. Then there was the Vor E-Surge with Deep Freeze, and then there was like the two elementalists that had the Ether and Cry, and they were spiking with Echo Cry of Pain, right? Before that got nerfed. But even if you think about those build, like I remember, for instance, doing the six, or it wasn't the six, right? But the tendril at the end of Veil, it was literally 2-2-2, and you were killing the tendril with degeneration with one mesmer skills that put like -7 degeneration, elf de degen degen. So yeah, it was pretty crazy how bad that was. But early development. And then I remember like the first DOA I was making, they were like 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, and obviously that went down quite a lot since.
Yeah. No, I actually remember that because I think when I first started doing DOA, it was actually like more of a manly way than a speed clear. Like we brought like warrior tanks and stuff, and we
Right.
just killed everything. And that took, I mean, there was that, and then there was glaive way if you wanted to pug it. Now there's not really
Yeah,
pugs. I don't know. Do people speed clear pug or no?
I don't even know what it is. Like obviously I know about the glaive way, right, which came a bit later. Actually, I think I already stopped playing with that was popular, but like I think that originally started a bit more with like Ursan, which was the first sort of I think strategies that were pretty good for casual or like just pick up team, right? Because it was But I think then it was mostly played normal mode, which is pretty crazy because if you look nowadays, you just go normal mode the way you can probably complete it with like with six, like you and five heroes without any much problem. Like maybe the furry is a bit hard, but in normal mode, it's insanely easy, right? With concept and so on. But of course, like when the Ursan was played, that was without concept and like people were obviously don't really understand what they were doing. Uh, you can imagine with pickup, it's quite hard to
No,
get a good team.
yeah, I no, I get that. Um, Speaking of like long time ago, do you remember how long ago we even started playing together?
Yeah, well, it must have been like 2014, right? Because I think you were still in FBGM then. Like it was sort of the FBGM Alliance, right? Where there was like FBGM, a bunch like Sand for sure were there. Like was Zero still a guild or no? Was it DS or so with like the Underworld guild then with Ross and forgot, but uh,
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
and I remember I was there with Rev, right? We're the French guild. Uh, And yeah, I think that was probably pretty much then. Like there was a perma that did then their 20 minutes DOA, right? And that must have been around then
No, I
that we
think it
really
was
first did.
before that, right? Because didn't you
We pro
run like casuals with us? I think that's how we started playing together. Was you would just be
Yeah,
on
for
late at
sure.
night to come on casual runs.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was still in the North America time zone then. I was still living in Canada, and I think yeah, for sure I was probably playing like you know sort of late hours Canada, which was the main hours like for USA. And I think FBGM then was pretty big deal, right? Because that was sort of the I don't know, almost the A-Day after Guild Wars 2, right? Where there was still quite a lot of people active. Um,
Yeah,
and that's also where
I actually
yeah.
think FPGM like helped keep the North American players playing the game. I don't think there was any once Guild Wars 2 came out, a lot of people just stopped playing Guild Wars 1 except for that guild and it kept everyone into it.
Yeah, I guess especially in the speed clear community, right? But
Yeah.
probably not so much in the casual or the or
Yeah. I just remember like even back when Guild Wars 2 came out, it was like if you did a subcon DOA, you still posted that. Do you remember the Derv update that happened?
no, I was not playing. I was following still a bit Guild Wars. Like when I stopped playing, I had like at least back then it was the on Guild Wars Guru. I think there was like this Zebra post about like keeping track of records that got then like replaced by Guild Wars SCR. But like I remember following a bit about it where it really went down. I stopped playing a bit when at the beginning of the trenchway, more or less, and it was pretty crazy to see like how low DOA became. There was obviously the records I think was 17 minute then. And there was quite a bit of competition before it got nerfed. But then no, I really didn't follow anything about the Derv update. Like when I restarted playing, it was already done. I just heard about it.
Yeah, I remember like people used to not really understand DOA like we do now. And I the old riff technique in Gloom, you used to literally just stand there with all the mobs on you and hit you,
Yeah,
but and you would just see the life through it. But the problem was now they would strip your enchantments, so people literally thought you couldn't do the DOA anymore. Stuff got
yeah,
more health. They stripped your enchantments at Rift. They're like we need a new tactic, and like people just didn't understand. You can just run around now. So
yeah. Yeah, of course. But I guess there was also like, even if you look in the early days of when sort of they made all those updates, and I remember the early tactic where you had like this cedar that had this glyph of renewal, I think it's called, right? That this elite glyph that elementalists have, and like the next skills or maybe the next few skills that are cast or recharged right away, right? And there was like all those tactic built around having the seed up 100% of the time. And then you had like I remember even for cave, right? You had the tank with the mantra of resolvation, right? To not get robbed, and he had all the bond in the world. And then he was getting dazed, and he was just like casting through the daze with this mantra, which is totally insane nowadays. Like you would never do something like that. And but of course the glyph was up all the time. But the crazy thing about it is that there was not even shroud in the build yet, right? Where nowadays sort of the if you have shadow form, you probably in like 95% of the cases have shroud with it. It's sort of like the combo shadow form plus shroud is I don't know what allow us to tank in almost everywhere, right?
right. No, I think I I don't did Shroud ever get updated or did people just start using it?
Well, I think like if you look before the update of shadow form and so on, like you didn't need shroud, right? So in most cases weren't losing any HP. And if you were losing HP, like I did quite a bit of Underworld way back in the day, right? Like before Doom and so on, where you had the old Shadow form, and then the role of the Terra Warrant call T1, T2, T3, and so on, right? There was the mountains, the pool, the plain, the pits, and the waste, of course. And for instance, like in almost all cases, you weren't ever losing any HP, right? You could lose HP, for instance, if you were going in a trap. And in this case, the only way you would get back your HP is with, I think, DC. I don't even think you were really playing with HOS, if I recall correctly, because you were playing with Honor, the Glyph for energy, Sliver by Earl Hammer, and DC, then the Paradox, right? The Deadly Paradox, I think, and Shadow Form. So I think it just didn't came to people mind that really the way to go wasn't so much to go the old way and try to keep alive with external heal, but really just to be like, well, I will just dodge somewhere around like 75 or whatever, how many percent of the attack on me. And
Right.
in fact, like when I learned TT or like learn to tank in Dayway, and that's still one thing that I recommend a lot of people that are sort of starting to tank is at the end of the run, you can go at Riff and you just grab all the group and you go on and you should pretty much be able to survive for almost ever by learning to play with your environment, to play with sidestepping, to play with speed boost, to play with SOH, to play with cliff and so on. You can really survive for an incredibly long amount of time, even though you have the Earths on you. Um, and that's really all about just moving, right?
Right.
Be- because in the meantime, in fact, like when the trench way was kind of the main thing that everybody was playing, and by far the fastest way. I know there was like this French guild called Now that were running a very different technique, and in fact they were doing something much more similar to what we are doing now. And I remember they only did few subcons without chess, right? Like it was skip chess and so on. But to kind of give an idea how old it is, it was still when YouTube were only accepting 10-minute long video. So whenever there was a DOA, it was only usually 3 videos or 4 videos, I guess, if it's more than 30 minutes, which is pretty. Of course, that's sometimes ago. But the funny thing is that they were playing with like sort of a equivalent of a trench tank that had bonity defense and the other skills that cost energy. Forgot the name, but and pretty much they were leveraging these other skills and bonity defense to tank or to sort of do cave with the earths on them, and you know that worked because they were blocking. I don't know how much percentage of the attack, but just this insane amount. But yeah, there was another time I even saw some crazy build where like the idea was you had Shroud, Mystic Regeneration, and Mirage Clock, and trying to do that.
Yeah, it's actually crazy how far we've come along in tactics and all these areas. I was actually speaking with someone else, but here's a question for you. If you if let's say necrotic never got nerfed, did you do like trenchway
Yeah, I
in
did
your
at the very beginning for the Trenchway.
so you probably it'd be really interesting to see like how fast our casuals could be. Like right now, what's the average time? Like is 24 a good time? 23?
Yeah, I mean 23 is obviously a very good time. Like in terms of casual, I think with Cedar, I think we did the 20 with IT. I don't know if I recall correctly whether for sure it was a 20 with Seed with IT. We did, I'm pretty sure, a 19 casual, but without uh, a Cedar. So obviously, like, I don't know if we can call it that casual. Like, arguably it's casual because we go for the chest and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we also got one super close that could have been a 19 with Seed, and there was a kind of a fuck up, and we lost like 10 seconds or so. But yeah, I mean, of course, like a very good casual is probably like 21, 22, 23 start to be like a good casual, and yeah, and so on.
Nice. I
But
think if necrotic was never nerfed, I think DOA casual times could be like 15 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, like that obviously it kind of depends what you mean by casual. I guess like casual really means sort of what you run every day without like the objective to get a record, but like it also means that almost all the teams skip most of the chests, right? Like nowadays it's true that for instance you have the TT that will skip 2 or 3 chests depending, right? Or or the MLK that will skip his city chess, but it's still very few people that skip their chess for speed improvements. Where if you go with Necrotic Travel, like event and casual, that means most people skip at least two chess, right?
No, you could still get your chest. It would just be for like getting into the trench and getting to gloom faster. Like I'm not
Right.
talking about like what Perma did with their
Uh,
record. They like necrotic through the
City, right?
city gate, right? That's
Yeah.
like a record tactic from
Right.
the start. That was actually, you know, people used to be able to like res scroll through the whole DOA.
But
You could
so
start
yeah, of course.
every
But that's
area.
not followed, right? I think like that was kind of a secret zero odd for quite a while, and they did their 17 this way, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, they
Uh,
did the res scroll stuff.
yeah. But that's kind of interesting because it kind of sort of lead to the next or to a topic which is like all the thing around whatever like toolbox or like speed clear rules or records rule or like what should be allowed, what shouldn't, and so on, right? Which is somewhat interesting because obviously like record I just came from something that was totally disorganized, right? There was not really any way. I mean, for when I was starting to play DOA, there was like all those ideas where like, oh, maybe the fastest time is a 45-minute by this guild or this guild. And then I remember there was always the German that were really, or at least we didn't had any contact with them really, and but they always had like some crazy tactic, and they were making pretty fast time as well, right? But it's very hard to say what was the fastest time then, just because there was really nowhere that was properly tracked. Um, yeah, but it's somewhat interesting because there's a lot of record that is also quite hard to know the condition in which they were made. There's no videos. There's sometimes the
Yeah,
screen or like
yeah, because
I don't.
the old rules used to say you just needed one screenshot. Like people didn't upload videos for records. That was um, a lot of the times people took credit in their tactics and they didn't want other people to know them. So that's
Yeah,
why a screenshot was only required. But now,
but
and
even the screenshot, right? They had like sometimes they were hiding the bill, hiding the mini maps, and so on and so forth, right? It was pretty
yeah,
crazy.
no, you're right. I think so with Toolbox, you saw people got banned. Now they're getting unbanned. Did you see all that stuff?
Yeah, I heard quite a bit. Like didn't see specifically because I'm not playing so much anymore, but yeah, saw quite a bit about it on Discord or Reddit.
Yeah, JV had a march on his stream, freed some people, so that's always a
Ah,
good
really?
sign. Yeah, he took it to, I guess social justice would be the word. We rioted
But
on Twitch.
but who did that?
Uh, JV, his name's Justin Vaughn, really good
Ah,
guy,
yeah, yeah, sure, I know who that
and
is. Okay.
he streamed it. It was pretty, it was a good stream. So
Yeah, I mean, it on one end, like it's true that it just doesn't respect the user agreement, right? But it's always a pretty complex subject, all those thing of third party tools. Um, but yeah, yeah, I can go ahead. I don't know if you had a question follow up on
what
that.
would you say the three biggest benefits of Toolbox are, if you had to say?
I mean, so for me, like, or at least in my opinion, the best thing about Toolbox are by far like the all sort of those improvements that were just not made probably because the game was like they stopped updating it and they stopped working on it. So all the stuff from like timestamp to like even I guess opening the chest anywhere in an outpost or targeting people with double clicking the name or having the chat being kept when you change characters and so on. Or to me the most useful stuff or like the what probably the best thing because first of all they are not really controversial, right? They everybody kind of agreed that they are a good thing, and in fact, a lot of them were implemented then in the game by dev, right?
Right.
So that's like the first thing that I think is definitely very, like, probably among the best thing, if not the best. Then, like, if we're talking about all the more sort of auto pecons and so on, um, like on one end, it's interesting, right? Like it's a bit like in sport, there's always, I guess, this thing of what tech do you allow in, right? And even in running, they don't allow every new shoes to be in competition because they consider that some of them give too much of an advantage. And it's somewhat interesting how it's a bit similar with toolbox. Like, I mean, like there's I think no question around the fact that, for instance, auto pecans give a pretty big advantage in some conditions. Um, but I think like the biggest failure, which might also have been just a timing thing, is that early on there was not really any rule around that. There was not really this question of like, oh, we should just make like a pure category which play without third-party software um, and a tool-assisted category that play with software, right? With Toolbox, for instance. So like to me that so of course like beacons really changed I think a lot of the speed clear and I mean personally I don't use the minimap, but I guess that must be one because about I don't know half the people have that play speed clear probably use the toolbox minimap, right? Use the toolbox minimap, which obviously is much more detail oriented than the Guild Wars minimap, right? It doesn't show all the useless stuff and pretty focused on showing what matter for a player playing competitively. So I would say yeah, probably the minimap as well.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing that benefits me the most would probably be the pecan popper. I don't think I've popped pecans myself for in a record scene in a very long time. I don't really use
Yeah,
it for casuals, but like I also like the I think one thing that gets overlooked is the teleportation.
the slash TP. Yeah, I
I
also really like it
I
actually.
think that's like the biggest thing that everyone uses that they forget that they use just because we're so used
Yeah,
to it. But it's like going from Embark to DOA is like so just nice. When back in the day you didn't have that option, you had to go through Commandant,
yeah,
and then I actually remember if you were forming a DOA, whoever was the leader always
yeah,
had to go to the outpost first and then to the guild hall so that they could just leave the guild hall without because you couldn't bring your party through Commandant. That wasn't an option because it's only four. Um, okay, so you
yeah.
mentioned in your last statement the different types of categories. Do you agree that they're with all three of them, the pure, standard, and TAS?
I mean, I think not really. Like, I mean, pure and TAS, I think they make perfect sense. Actually, I'm not totally up to date with what are the rule in TAS, so like, I would assume, well, at least I think conceptually the category make a lot of sense. I think standard really doesn't make sense to the extent that, like, I don't know if you recall how that was initially created, right? Like, there was this sort of Excel sheet or vote, right? Google Doc vote on Guild Wars SCR, and then I think it wasn't totally clear then, if I remember correctly, first of all, that there would be like three categories. I think there was still this question about whether there would be three or two categories. And the other thing, there was obviously like just two side, right? Like there was the side I think that was more, I guess, FBGM people, and then more like the Go people. Then, if I remember correctly, that was like especially around the minimap. But what it ended up being is like, okay, the minimap is forbidden in standard, or I think a lot of feature in the minimap. But then you have the auto pecans, which is allowed, which really doesn't make much sense. Um, so I don't know. To me, like I really don't particularly like the standard rule set. Uh, so yeah,
No, I actually agree. I think popping pecans actually gives you far more advantage to someone not having that feature in a record setting. Um, like the ability to just spawn, like get rezzed and be able to cast your skill and immediately have like the attribute bonuses without having to pop an egg and a corn yourself. Give you like it's. I think I would be a fan of just pure and TAS personally.
yeah.
I know a lot of people have gotten so used to playing. I feel like just the standards, just the convenient way to do stuff without
Well,
actually. I do think that there's certain features with Toolbox that are definitely TAS and like cheating, in my opinion. If you like like hossing off mini pets or eating to ghosts and
Sure.
stuff. Like that's just something that you need toolbox to do. So that makes sense to have a task category, but I don't know why. I think it should just be two. Like either play with it or
I
play
mean,
without, but
yeah, yeah, sure. I think like to be honest, I feel that's what most people would think about today. I think like one reason standard was there is just that it's probably what represented most of the record at the time, right? So it was sort of a way to say all the records that exist are still valid. Because otherwise we would have been like, okay, all the records that have been done are just like not really within the either pure or task rule set, or like they are within task rule set, but then they will easily be able to get bypassed or like beat it. But I think like we with regard to like if you're looking at anything in toolbox and wondering should that be in standard or task, right? Like the line can be fairly hard to draw. And I guess there's always this question, like for instance, you know, if you're doing, I don't know, a triathlon or like a marathon, you can obviously not just go in a car and do 20 kilometers or like 20 miles and finish the last, I think, whatever, 6 miles, right? That would be like purely cheating. But of course, you can like use a lot of tech that comes along, like there are shoes that are better and so on. And yeah, I don't know, the line can be fairly hard to draw. But that's also where it's the easiest to just say there's two categories, nothing or everything, sort of.
yeah. Do you think people would play pure if we eliminated standard, or do you think that they would just say screw it, let's use everything?
I mean, personally, I would play pure, but I don't know how many people would. I mean, I guess nowadays we have pure, and how many people play pure, right? We could
Right.
probably say see that. Probably not so many. Maybe that's part of because of standard. Um, I guess it might also be somewhat related to like the second base records that I think was introduced fairly recently, but of course, like if we look back, should probably have been introduced much earlier, right? Like sort of video plus rule based records.
That's a good topic. Do you think second base records are a good idea?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
You like the idea of it?
yeah, I just think like I totally agree with like the point of like Guild Wars has like a pretty fair amount of random, right? Where it's just uh you know, you two perfectly equal team can have probably a plus or 30 second in a like 15-minute DOA or equivalent, right? But I just think that like the good thing with second base record, it made the barrier to beat the previous record much easier, which is a much better incentive. Because even if you look at all the records we did together in DOA, it was all or like from the 18 going down, it was all always month long work, right? Like you're talking sometime like 6 months of work or so, which is pretty insane. Like not so yeah, I think second base records really make much more sense in that regard. I guess the biggest reason it's not there is just a big lack of support in the game.
No, I agree. I actually think it's not a good idea just because I would hate to have my record broken by someone that just gets like a better spawn, right? Because someone could just go in,
Huh,
do the exact same stuff that we did, and their spawn's better in like the foundry room, so they get a 10-second faster time. And now all of a
sure,
sudden, they have the record. But like the
sure, but
original creation of the tactics, like they just took it all, you know?
yeah, sure, but on one end, like so I guess that so there's two things there. Like the first one, there's always this question about like whether it's a good idea to keep the creation of the tactic private. And there's, I think to me, there's two obvious reasons why not. The first one is just to be able to check if the record was done correctly, right? And like to verify the legitimacy of the record. But the second one, I think like this is the interesting thing is that you work to make a record. And like if you want to keep the tactic private to make a better time, well, just then don't post your record right away, right? Like make a better time, then post your record with the new tactics. And on the other end, I also think that it would reduce the grind by quite a lot because if you're doing a record, you might beat the previous record by 10 seconds and then keep going to try to beat it by 20 seconds or so. And it would make probably like or like far more rewarding running for records. because I don't know if you recall when we started running for the 15, there was all those questions about like, well, if we want to do the 15, then we need, or like the 16, we need to gain that much time in all those area because that's more or less where we know we can gain any seconds. And then there was always those problem about like, okay, well, if we exit Foundry after that time, should we resign, right? Because that make it almost impossible to finish the DOA in time. And that's obviously because we were trying to gain a full minute, right? And then if you're trying to gain a full second, then you're much more flexible in that regard. And I don't know, I probably make it easier to grind over time. But yeah, I guess it's the nature of all the speed clear game that have random factor to it, is that it make it second base make it fairly random who's the best.
Okay. Um, this next question for you is actually something that Nina asked. I've never actually thought of it personally. Do you think we should show second and third place records like on the board?
Right. I mean, to me, it's sort of it would be great, but I just feel like it creates like a pretty big amount of work for the mod, and that's I guess just like a technical limitation we have because of the forum, right? Like everything needs to be done manually. But you can just imagine like all if all those things were automatized, it would be trivial to show maybe the second, the fourth, and maybe more, right? And so sometimes I don't know if speedclear.com if that's like the big website do that, but I think they just show like just everybody ordered, right? So it doesn't matter. Like they don't have any limitation because nobody maintained those things manually. So like if they want to show the best 1,000 people, then it's not very hard, right? It's just ordered. So I think like if it was that easy, for sure, I think there's no cost, or yeah, there wouldn't be any cost in that.
Okay. Now, I actually, with the second and third place, I didn't ever think about it. I guess it's never been done before. So that was like an interesting question. I don't know if I'd even like to see it. I could see it like causing the table to just get out of control.
Yeah, sure, but like you're talking more about like the Guild Wars SCR table, right? Which is like a
Yeah.
forum thread. Yeah,
Right.
but like I mean, just think about like NBA or all those things. Like they don't just show who won the title, right? Or like they have statistic going back I don't know how many years, and it's all pretty easy because it's organized in a convenient way, right? Like you don't have to show everything. It's all automated, so nobody has to go on and edit everything manually all the time. Because I do agree, like if you're talking about sort of just a table that is a summary of all the records, then probably you don't want to show at the more than the first three. Like then maybe the first three is a good question whether you want to show that. But it would be great, I think, to have the technical capabilities to see like all the records that were done before in sort of ordered way, and maybe with date and so on.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. I think the problem is though a lot of old records got deleted, like the screenshots got deleted, right?
Yeah,
And if there's videos out there, no one today knows about them or has them. So it'd be pretty like a lot of the older stuff is kind of filed away.
yeah,
Because they used to use that other. Now everyone uses like Imgur or Gyazo, but there used to
yeah,
be a different one that
yeah. Of course, there
deleted
was
it.
Image Shack was the super popular then.
Yeah,
Yeah, I recall that, and I think like it was a big. I just recall when about half the screenshot in Guild Wars just got deleted or not accessible anymore because they were all hosted on Image Shack, which was I think they went like some paying solution, and you had the ability to keep your image up if you're paying for them. Anyway, it was a huge mess, and yeah, you're right. About half the image just went away, or same for videos. A lot of videos just disappeared. But I guess like yeah, I'm sure, like, I cannot say by myself, but there must be precedent about how to deal with that, right? Like, you can just imagine if you're talking about sport, right? There's all those things that were done when there was probably not no cameras or very few cameras filming the game, and it was black and white or maybe bad quality. Maybe there was. I mean, I see that you're wearing a Steelers T-shirt, or not T-shirt, but sweatshirt, and
Right.
I mean, there's obviously like this big thing about the one Steelers Super Bowl where there was the pass that was sort of batted and caught back and touchdown, and it gave them a Super Bowl, right? Forgot the name of this event, but that's typically a similar situation where like it's impossible to say whether the ball touched the ground before.
Yeah, if you want to know what he's talking about, Google immaculate reception is the
Yeah,
name of it.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
um so now we talked about a lot of Guild Wars. What is the most fun Guild Wars experience you've had?
I mean, I would say like the specific experience. Like I mean, I just recall we had so much fun back then, in Sant when like sort of it was you, Marcin, Fabi, Nico, and so on and so forth, right? When we all went to Sant after we left FBGM and so on. I mean, there was a lot of fun moment there with also Willie and all those meme. It's kind of hard to say, like to point to a specific moment. I would say also like it's more or less related to Guild Wars, but like the amount of work in Toolbox was for me like one of the most fun thing I did in the game, and also totally changed my career, right? Like what I'm doing today professionally is totally because of the work I did there. Um, so yeah, maybe I would say Toolbox in that case, like work put on Toolbox.
Oh, okay. I would actually say for me, the funnest or the most fun Guild Wars experience I've had is definitely back in the day in Cent. I would agree that's been like just doing we used to do DOA all day, every day, and never got bored of it. Now I
Yeah.
can't do that for so long. It's too boring. But I think it's just like it's not about what you do. It's just more so like the people that you play with.
Yeah, of course. I mean, to be honest, like sometime, or at least at some point with IT, we were often doing a bunch of Scribble together. Like, and again, that's typically we aren't playing Guild Wars, but it's just fun to have like to be on TeamSpeak, to joke around, and I feel like that's the best thing with Guild Wars, and in fact, that's one thing that I feel miss with a lot of more recent games, especially the games that are a matchmaking base, where because you're in matchmaking, the odd that you play with the same people is almost zero, right? So it kind of creates this situation where you only play with the same people if you knew them before playing the game. You don't really make to meet new peoples. Where Guild Wars was really all about meeting new people because you're stuck in some mission back in the day. Maybe you want to do speed clear nowadays, and you will tend to just play all the time with the same people, and so you will start building some affinities and some friendship. And yeah, I think like Guild Wars was absolutely amazing to that extent. um, it's pretty crazy, like even if you look, there's a lot of people like just within our circle, but I guess a lot of people have similar experience in Guild Wars where they know some friend there for 10 years, 12 years, and so right. And that's pretty insane if you think about it, like for a game.
Right. Now you'd mentioned earlier about all these records. You the record scene. What is your best record achievement? Like the one that you're in. What do you think is the best one?
I mean, it has to be, I think, the 15-minute DOA. Like the amount of grind, the amount of tactic. Although to be fair, like I feel a lot of the strat there were just built over such a long time, and like to me, that's the nicest thing about it, which is like even if you think about it, like we really started building the strat for the 15-minute DOA sort of in when we did the 19-minute DOA or so, right? Or I guess even like taking the work that Perma did in their 20, right? Because that was really the base for the tactics then.
Yeah, it was actually funny you say that. I think the Perma introduced the minion right to getting into the trench, and
Yeah.
that really changed the game. And then I think people don't. know this. I don't know if people know this, but me and you were actually the ones that started doing Monk Lord the way it's done now.
Yeah, exactly. But
Like,
that was exactly the example I was going to say, which is like Monklord always used to be this super big problem for records, which was like, okay, Monklord is way too slow. How do we get faster? And there was like, the first try we did with the deep freeze, right? There was like the three mesmers going up, and or was
right,
it three or four mesmers? Yeah, I think three with deep freeze, and that was like still the 19, right, with Dylan, if I remember correctly, or the
right.
18,
No, yep.
and and then like that. Okay, so we killed this guy. So we had all those crazy tactic with I don't know if you recall, like the mesmer was spiking from the Derv Lord ill, and then eing down, and then dying, and somebody was resing him to the B4 360. I don't know if you recall that.
Now I only remember that because one run Fabi couldn't be rezzed, and we
Yeah, oh
failed.
yeah, that's true.
That's
Because
why I
oh
remember
yeah,
that.
because the guys had to die not too close to the Tormentor because the res range for res scroll is super awkward at this position. Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, of course, and then there was all those ID with, of course, SOH that got, I don't know, polish over time. And that's the insane thing. Like if you look, most of the time, the improvement in tactic weren't about making stuff more complex, right? They were always about making stuff more simple. So we went on like maybe past quite a bit of evening or night talking about tactics, trying to get like some crazy stuff. For instance, I don't know if you recall what we wanted to do with the Mesmer spiking the Necrolord from the Ranger Ill, the Ranger Underlord Ill. Um, and I don't know if you recall that part. We were like, it was one evening or two evening we tried that,
No,
but
yeah.
then, and that was just insane. And there was like all those things where, yeah, but at the end of the day, it always, or most improvements always boil down to just make stuff safer, simpler, and less error prone. And yeah, it's pretty crazy when I see like all the improvement and all the details as well, right? You can watch a video nowadays of one of the record, and if you understand like all the detail or all the history behind a lot of those like small thing, it's pretty cool. Like even EWE placement. Why do you put the EWE at this exact pixel, right, to block the snake? And yeah, it was just pretty crazy.
Okay, let me ask you this one. For looking at all the records that have been done, whether you've been in it or not, what do you think is the most impressive? Like that you can look at, whether it's task, pure, whatever. What do you think is
Yeah.
like the most
So
impressive?
so I was thinking quite a while about it, but I must say I think it's a solo underworld. Like Posthume, like the current solo underworld or so. Like to me, it's just insane. Like when you look at, and it's maybe because I don't know as much about underworld as about DOA, but to me, it's just absolutely insane how you get to be able to complete a solo underworld with the current like underworld. And I remember like even that is probably like discussion and like crazy or wild ideas going back, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years, right? I just recall when don't recall exactly who did it, but how to do a plane solo, right? And I don't know if you recall for how long that was discussed and tried and all those different ID. And then you see people doing it nowadays. It seems to be like pretty understood and stable, or like maybe there's still quite a bit of randomness, but probably far less than there was initially with the tactic that they had. And to me, when I look at that, it's just absolutely insane that you can get to finish an underroll by yourself without any heroes or other players.
Wow, so you think it's Underworld? For me, it's actually the same category. I think solo DOA is the most impressive record.
Yeah,
When
I
I
was
look
doing a
at the amount of time like Ether's put into that stuff, like it is crazy. Um, that man sat
yeah,
there and figured out rotations for all the Foundry mobs. He learned so much about souls he discovered for duping and just the amount of how quickly they're able to do that. And I don't know too much about solo underworld, so maybe it is like more impressive, but I just know for me and what I've watched over, like that solo DOA is probably the most impressive record. And Ether's probably gonna clip this and save it for himself, but that's okay. Um,
yeah. I mean, I must agree that like to me that those were the two finalists, right? Like those were the two without question. I was thinking about which one. Or I mean, there was obviously the two-man DOA we did one time. Uh, that was probably even more impressive because we finished in like 2 hours. um, but yeah, the solo DOA and solo underworld are insanely impressive. I think to me, like the biggest reason why I went solo underworld is that I just feel like there's some stuff that you just cannot imagine how that's even possible to do. I feel like plane or like 4H or yeah,
No, I
or
agree because
heavenly.
like really solo DOA is just you just whirl stuff down, right? And
Well, it's more or less true because there's also like to the credit of solo on DOA, there's also like what Mike did initially with this idea of like that's really what speeded up or like that's was what really speeded up in around 2014 or 15 or I guess maybe 16 when it was done, which was this idea that you could actually exploit the double stacking of enchantment to go to zero damage, right, with Shadow Form. And back then, like you could see some older solo DOA where pretty much they were bringing the youngers to glitch spot them in city every waves, right? So or not only every wave, but pretty much everywhere, which made it much slower. And this idea that you could actually take zero damage from the zone effect in Veil really opened a lot of doors. And of course, Ether capitalized on that, right? Like that was pretty. I must say, like if you look the time of a solo DOA, it's just absolutely insane.
right, yeah, to be able to there's literally they can like duo faster than we used to be able to 8-man.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
that's
saw
crazy.
the latest duo record they were able to do, but that's
I
crazy.
don't I don't know. I might have. Do you know the time?
Subcons they did
Oh,
29, I
really?
think. Yeah,
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean that's totally
it's
insane. Yeah.
I mean they grinded it, so hats off to them. But see,
Yeah, of course. Like all the solo, I think in Guild Wars generally, like solo thing are very impressive by the nature of the game, right? Because it's a game that is all built around the like sort of your hero is not overpowered, right? Like you're pretty much less powerful than any enemies by yourself, right? Like it's all about how you kind of leverage all the or like even if you look the solo DOA is not how you're more powerful than enemies, right? It's how you're more powerful than enemies when you have a shitload of them attacking you and being and sort of inflicting or returning damage or reflecting damage. So yeah, I mean I think solo in Guild Wars is pretty impressive in the first place, and of course DOA and Underworld is
all right,
probably the two hardest zone, right?
what would you say is the funnest record team you've ever been on? And I guess for
That
you, it's only did you enjoy more running with like the our DOA team or the IT DOA team? That's what it comes down
I
to
mean
for
I
you.
never wanted the IT so much. Oh, I guess unless you meant the 15,
Yeah, the
but
15.
no, but to me that's not it. To me, the much more funny uh, record team was Morrison, Tom, you, and I when we did the four man.
The 4-man, that was your favorite one?
Yeah, I mean it was at least the most funny one. I think we had a shitload of fun running. Like there was all those, yeah, a lot of trolling and so on. So yeah,
The 4-man, okay. I think
I mean
the one that took the most time for me personally was me and Marston's duo DOA way back when. I mean, the record
yeah,
now subcon, we did like a 48 or something like that. So, I mean, but that was back in like 2014 or something, or 2015 maybe. I can't
right.
remember. But I think that was like at the time the record was like 54 and we beat it by like 6 minutes, but we grinded that area.
Yeah.
And it's I think duo's a lot easier than 8-man, but it results in a lot more of a grind because you can just in terms of like player availability, you don't have to worry about anyone's like schedule besides you and another person.
Yeah, I mean, I feel there's also far less drama, and like drama is not necessarily abnormal. Like I play also football competitively, and it's the same, right? Like there's always when you if you're competitive in something, there will be some drama within the team, and of course, if you're only two, well, there's not so many of them, right? Like it's far less. It's much easier to agree on something. But I recall like for all our grind from like the 19 DOA to the 15, like there was so much like moment where like of course like there's a lot of fight, right? Like about like what is the thing to do and so on. So I don't think I don't know if like the 8-man DOA are as enjoyable at like every moment, but of course when you finish it, that but sometimes it's finishing up like a 7 month long grind or even more sometimes.
I think in all the record videos, probably Tom probably gives the best reaction because he just screams yes as soon as we complete. I think you can look at the 8-man, the 4-man. It's just Tom screaming yes as soon as we're done. Let me
Right.
ask you this question: do you
Uh,
think you'll return to the record scene? Or are
No,
you
no, for
done?
sure not. No, no, for sure I won't. But like first of all, like, in terms of reaction, I kind of also quite enjoyed the. I guess it was SPQR, right, which were I guess perma as well in the day where they had like "We Are the Champion" playing in the background when they were doing the record. That was always sort of a signature. But in terms of records, I think it's just way too time consuming, and I just don't want to invest that time in. So yeah, that's mostly it.
No, I agree. Let's see. What is your favorite game other than Guild Wars?
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I have a couple of IDs, but it's somewhat funny how like I mostly play Guild Wars, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
guess if people think I'm a gamer, it's more like I played one game really in my life or a lot, which was Guild Wars. But other than that, I think like where the one that came to my mind is like Binding of Isaac or Prayed, which are two like solo game, right? They are not online game. So yeah, I think that would be like the two. Maybe I could say Binding of Isaac, a bit more complete, bigger, I guess, not complete.
Okay.
But yeah,
I think mine would probably be League of Legends. I think I've
yeah,
played. I think that would League would actually be the funnest game I played. I would rank it ahead
really,
of Guild Wars. Yeah, I think in terms of like wanting to play a game, it's been League of Legends. Like I don't I remember whenever I used to do like it was we used to play like flex queue, like ranked fives, where you would go in with players, and we used to play that every day, and that was just fun. And I would
right,
play with like Michael, Christie, Jeremy, and some other fifth player. I never like, even when I was really active in Guild Wars, it was never like oh, I can't wait to play Guild Wars, you
oh
know?
really, okay. I mean, like to me, like I play League of Legends like season I think 2, 3, or no season end of the 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, I think that was it. And of course, like it's such a different game because they're talking about all those flex queue and so on. Like I really don't know anything about it, right? And but to me, the biggest issue with League of Legends, it was so hard to follow up. Like if you stop for 2 months, like but it's when I look at the game today, I just cannot understand anything about it. And I play a shitload of it, right? I must have played like 800 hours easily, maybe 1,000 plus, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't think there's not really slash age. I don't know. Uh, but in fact, like another very good game that now that you mentioned your sort of story that I guess was very fun. It was when I stopped playing Guild Wars. I think in high school I had three very good friends, and literally every day after school we were playing Call of Duty together, and we were doing like for man like there was like this mod where it was a random game between like search and research and destroy, capture the flag or like demolition. I think it was Call of Duty 6, right? Modern Warfare 2. And that was super fun as well. Like it was just a ton of fun that every day after school we play together.
Yeah, I agree. I actually the first Call of Duty I ever played was Warzone, which just came out like a
Yeah.
year ago. So I
So
never had any experience with Call of Duty before, but it is pretty fun. They do a
yeah,
great job.
honestly, I don't know any of the modern. Like I play Call of Duty, so that like the first one I played was the Modern Warfare 2. Then like there was Black Ops 1 that came out, or it was just called Black Ops. Then there was not the 2 yet, of course. And that's it. Like we only played those two games, and then I sort of never played Call of Duty again. But yeah, I mean they are a ton of fun, especially if you can play with people. But it kind of goes back to the point where like, did you met anybody on those games? And at least personally, never, right? Like it was sort of game that where if you don't go and play with friend, you will never get to meet anybody.
That's fair. I think I met most of my online friends from Guild Wars, for
Yeah.
sure. I don't think I've ever even met any friend from League. So that's a fair point.
And I think it's a bit unfortunate. Like I don't know if you ever play StarCraft. Um, or like Warcraft 3 or so on. But like you could see the same thing where like older game like Warcraft 3, like I feel you could really met people just by the nature. Like there was those chat room that were filled with people. And I don't know if League still have the chat room. I know in the early days they had, but they were always empty. Nobody were on. But it's a bit similar with StarCraft 2, at least when I stopped playing the game. Like they had those chat room, but nobody were using it. So it always end up being that like if you don't know anybody, well, you're just sort of will never get to meet the people again. And at some point I was discussing, I don't know with who, but like whether I would be very interested to have like a big game like League of Legends or whatever other game and try like to engineer the matchmaking such that it try to match the same people together as much as possible. You know, probably with some randomness and probably within a pool, but just sort of this idea that if you can get some people to play very often with each other, will they build like some kind of relationship where they like to play with each other, they have like this affinity and they sort of add themselves as friend and keep playing together, right? Because I feel a lot of people still play Guild Wars for this exact reason, right? Is because they like to play with the people they play with.
Right. I think that's for me. It's reason I. It's just I don't play with the same people I used to, so it's not as enjoyable when I log
Right.
into Guild Wars.
Yeah, because you need to build like new sort of friendship, right? To sort of enjoy it. Yeah. And if you stop for a while, that's obviously quite hard. But the other game that I've played like a fair amount was Minecraft. That was sort of somewhat like in the early days of Minecraft as well. It was again a friend from school that was like, I found this new game, like it looks super childish, it's a bunch of square and so on. But you try it, it will be super fun. And we got like the crack version because it was super easy. I'm not even sure it was crack. It might have been like an infinite tryout. I'm not exactly sure how it was working, or maybe there was just like no check if you were playing offline. I don't recall exactly. But then we just had like again a ton of fun playing together, and then I bought the game, which was crazy because back then I think the game when I bought it must have been $10, and then they slowly like increased the price all the time. Um, but then the way it was working for this game is that there was a bunch of servers, and at least most servers that I knew of then were mostly sort of those role play games. So the idea was to build some kind of servers with a lot of fun and with like sort of all those maybe story and so on, and try to be within the role play, I guess. And
Right.
but then you had to apply on forum, like a bit like Guild Wars. Then I don't know if you probably recall, but Guild Wars then, if you wanted to join some SC guild, you usually had to make an application. So you were going on the forum, showing all your characters that you had, which title they had, which zone they had unlocked, right? Which for DOA, for on the roll, what your experience was, and so on. And then people were like, okay, yeah, +1, -1, and so on, and then you were accept or refuse. And it was very similar for Minecraft, and that was pretty cool because then you really put some effort to go onto a server, and you always keep playing on the same server, and so you get to know people on those servers and you get to make friends. And for a bit as on Guild Wars on Minecraft, I made quite a lot of friends that I stayed in contact with because like the game was sort of built around this idea that you get to play always with the same people.
Okay. I got two final questions for you here, and I'll let you go.
Yeah.
How's it been living in Germany?
Pretty good, honestly. Like it's not really a culture shock compared to Canada. Like there's a couple of things that are different, but like overall the society is organized very similarly. So I feel it's just pretty easy. Like I don't know if I would have want to go live in, more in the east, like Asia, probably not. Like I'm not, I guess, that into culture shock, but but yeah, Germany is very easy.
How's your German? You learning the language?
Yeah, it's getting better actually. Very recently, I started to learn much quicker. I get to speak now much more often, but it's a bit the unfortunate thing where, like, I'm working in a company where, like, so it's like something like 95% is in English, if not more, and the rest is probably in French because it's a French company. So, like, there's very like I just don't get to speak German at all there.
Do people laugh at you when you speak German? Like you guys laugh at
Not
me
at
when I
all.
speak French?
Not at all. In fact, like in our team, there's far fewer German than people from other countries, right? Like we have people from about all from a shitload of different countries, like 8 or 9 different countries, but there's only 2 of them or 3 of them that come from Germany. So
So, Matt, if you spoke to Moo in German, would he laugh at you and say you sound
yeah,
dumb?
well, of course, right? Like I definitely sound dumb. Like to be fair, like sounding dumb, it doesn't mean that you cannot be understood, right? To the extent that you probably, even when you're pretty fluent, keep sounding pretty dumb for a while until you get pretty comfortable with the language and pretty fast with it. Um, but I guess like that's another crazy thing about Guild Wars. I just think about it. The only reason that I can speak English pretty well is because of Guild Wars. Like there was a moment where I just started playing with international players, and that meant that I had to speak English maybe 3, 4 hours every day. And like that's really how you get better, right?
Right. Okay, final question for you, Livia. What are the top three German foods that you enjoy?
Yeah. So I mean, there's two that I were pretty obvious because it just came to my mind. So the first one is like this thing like there's no good translation, but it's called like Leberkäse, and with that you have like roast potatoes and like a salad and an egg, or like a fried egg, right? But the Leberkäse is more or less like a sausage, like it's very much the same idea. It's a bit different shape, but then it's just a very good launch thing. You can do it in 30 minutes, and yeah, very good. And the other one, I mean, it's more or less German. It's maybe more Austrian, but like the schnitzel, right? Like that's a classic schnitzel with fries. So that's for me like probably the two best that came to my mind. And for the third one, like I don't really have any name because first of all, like even if I get to eat something, like I don't necessarily know the name, right? Especially in a restaurant. But like
Oh,
there's a lot like for instance, well it's actually quite interesting. Like there's this place close to where I work where we fairly often go, which is like something you don't really see in North America, but it's pretty common in Germany. Like they have sort of a menu for the lunch, right? And they are maybe the restaurant or the thing is only open from like 12 to 3 in the afternoon, and that's it, right? Where they really only serve for lunch, and that's a very nice place because they have like a daily menu that rotate and always have like 3 items on the menu, and they are like pretty either like not always traditional German, but often they have traditional German thing, and you just get to pick one random and you get to taste it, and this place is pretty usually pretty good. But yeah, I mean there of course there's another pretty like it's not per se a dish, but it's something that you have in a lot of German dishes, which is like potato salad, right? Salad, and that's pretty good. Yeah.
okay. I think we're good for this, Livia. Thank you for joining me here. I did see Marson say he wants you gone, but that was as soon as it started. So
Yeah.
I don't think you have a friend in Marson. But I will,
Yeah.
since Marson's my friend, I will obey his command and I will remove you. But it's been fun. I appreciate it, Livia.
Yeah. It was very fun. Have fun and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ciao.